He wasn't buying a home. He was buying a place to disappear. And for $47 and a handshake that felt more like a warning than a deal, Ethan Cole became the owner of something no one in that small Oregon town wanted to remember, let alone live inside. And as the late afternoon light stretched thin across the overgrown clearing, the cabin stood there like it had been holding its breath for years, vines strangling the porch rails, crawling up shattered window frames, wrapping the place in a quiet kind of suffocation that didn't feel natural. And Ethan just stood there for a long moment, one hand resting loosely on the worn leather leash, the other buried in the pocket of a jacket that had seen too many winters and not enough reasons to stay warm. While beside him Ranger, a sable-coated German shepherd with steady amber eyes, didn't pull forward, didn't bark, didn't even sniff the ground the way most dogs would. He just watched, still as a statue, like he understood. Something Ethan didn't, like he could feel whatever lingered in the silence between the trees, and the wind moved softly through the clearing carrying the scent of damp wood and old earth, the kind of smell that clings to places long after people leave. And for a second Ethan almost turned around, almost laughed it off as another bad decision in a long line of them. But there was nowhere else to go, no apartment waiting, no family calling, no mission left to complete, just miles of road behind him and a past that refused to stay buried no matter how far he drove. And so he stepped forward, boots crunching against gravel half swallowed by weeds, each step sounding louder than it should in the stillness. And the porch creaked under his weight like it hadn't carried anyone in years. And somewhere in the distance a crow called once and then went quiet, as if even the wildlife knew better than to linger. And Ethan reached for the door, hesitated just long enough to notice Ranger hadn't moved, hadn't followed. The dog standing at the edge of the clearing with ears forward and body rigid, watching not the cabin, but the ground just in front of it, as if marking a boundary invisible to human eyes. And Ethan exhaled slowly, a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding, before pushing the door open, the hinges protesting in a low, tired groan, and inside the air was colder, thicker, like stepping into a place where time had slowed down and forgotten to start again. Dust hanging in the slanted light, old furniture draped in sheets that had long since surrendered to decay. And he took a step in, then another, feeling the boards shift beneath him, listening to the house speak in quiet creaks and distant settling sounds. And for a moment it felt almost familiar, not the cabin itself, but the feeling of being somewhere between leaving and staying, between ending and beginning, that strange hollow space where a man could either break or rebuild. And behind him Ranger finally moved, one slow step onto the porch, then another, but he didn't cross the threshold, didn't come inside. Instead he lowered his head slightly, eyes fixed on a single spot near the base of the doorway, unmoving, unwavering, as if the ground itself was trying to tell him something. And Ethan turned back, noticing it now, the way the dog's entire posture had changed, not fear, not aggression, something quieter, something deeper, a certainty. And for the first time since buying the place, Ethan felt it too, not in his mind, but somewhere lower, somewhere harder to ignore, the sense that this cabin wasn't just abandoned, it was waiting, and whatever it was waiting for, it had just begun. The first night does not arrive all at once. It seeps in slowly through the cracks in the walls and the spaces between breaths, and by the time the last stretch of daylight fades behind the trees, Ethan Cole is already sitting on the edge of a warped wooden chair inside the cabin, listening to the quiet in a way he has not done in years, not since nights overseas when silence meant something was about to change. And the air inside feels heavier now, cooler than it should be for early fall, carrying that same damp scent of old wood and something older beneath it, something buried in time rather than soil. And he runs a hand over his face, rough stubble catching against his palm, trying to convince himself that this is just another place, just another roof over his head. But the thought does not settle the way it should. It drifts, unfinished, like everything else in his life lately. And outside the last light gives way to a thin blue darkness, the kind that stretches shadows longer than they ought to be. And Ranger still has not come fully inside, the dog lying just beyond the doorway with his body angled toward the threshold, as if guarding it or measuring it, eyes half open but never unfocused, always watching, always listening. And Ethan notices it again, the same thing from earlier, the way Ranger's attention keeps returning to that exact spot near the base of the door, a section of ground that looks no different from the rest, worn wood, faint cracks, a scattering of dirt tracked in over years, and yet the dog treats it like it matters, like it holds something worth remembering. And Ethan leans back, the chair groaning beneath him, trying to shake off the unease, telling himself that dogs pick up on smells, on old scents left behind, that it is nothing more than instinct. But even that explanation feels thin, like a story, told to keep from asking better questions, and the wind shifts outside, brushing against the cabin walls with a low whisper, not quite a sound, more like the absence of one, and somewhere deeper in the structure a board settles with a soft, hollow knock, and Ethan's shoulders tighten before he can stop them, a reflex he has never fully unlearned, and he exhales slowly, steadying himself, counting the seconds the way he used to, grounding himself in something real, something measurable. But the cabin does not respond to logic. It breathes in its own rhythm, slow and uneven, and time seems to stretch inside it, minutes feeling longer than they should, as if the place is holding on to each second before letting it pass. And eventually Ethan stands, crossing the room with careful steps, testing each board beneath his boots, the sound of his movement echoing faintly in the empty space. And he stops near the doorway, looking down at the spot Ranger has been watching, really looking this time, not just glancing. And the wood there is slightly darker, worn differently, not broken, not obvious, just off, like something has pressed against it for a long time and then stopped. And Ranger lifts his head as Ethan approaches, ears forward, eyes locking onto him for a brief second before shifting back to that same place, as if urging him without a sound. And Ethan crouches slowly, one knee touching the cold floor, fingers brushing over the surface, tracing the faint irregularity in the grain. And for a moment nothing happens, just the quiet and the steady presence of the dog beside him. And then the wind outside dies completely, the trees going still, the air settling into a silence so complete it feels almost deliberate. And Ethan feels it then, not fear, not exactly, but recognition, the same quiet certainty he has felt before when something unseen was about to reveal itself. And he withdraws his hand, not out of hesitation but out of respect for whatever this moment is becoming. And Ranger shifts closer, just enough that his shoulder brushes Ethan's arm, solid and warm, a living anchor in a place that does not feel entirely still. And Ethan lets out a breath he did not realize he was holding, whispering under it, more to himself than anything else, that tomorrow will be soon enough, that whatever this is can wait one more night. But the way Ranger does not look away, does not relax, tells a different story, one that has already begun whether Ethan is ready or not. Morning does not rush into the cabin. It filters in slowly through the broken slats of the windows, thin strands of pale light stretching across the warped floor like something careful not to wake what still lingers. And Ethan Cole opens his eyes to a silence that feels different from the night before, not heavier, not lighter, just waiting. And for a few seconds he does not move, lying still on the old cot he dragged into the corner, listening, measuring the quiet the way he was trained to, expecting some shift, some signal. But nothing comes except the distant call of a bird and the faint rustle of leaves outside. And then he hears it, a soft, steady movement close by, not loud, not urgent, just deliberate. And he turns his head to find Ranger already awake, already standing, positioned near the doorway exactly where he had been the night before, as if he never left, as if sleep had not touched him at all. And the dog's posture is the same, ears forward, body still, eyes locked onto that same spot at the base of the threshold. And something about that consistency unsettles Ethan more than any sudden noise could have, because this is not random behavior. It is focus, it is intent. And Ethan sits up slowly, boots finding the floor with a dull thud, his body stiff from a night that did not fully become rest. And he runs a hand through his hair, glancing once toward the open doorway where the morning air drifts in cool and clean, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth, so different from the stale weight inside the cabin. And for a moment he considers stepping outside, letting the daylight break whatever hold this place has on him. But Ranger does not move, does not follow that instinct. And Ethan has learned, through years of trusting signals that cannot always be explained, that hesitation like this matters. And so instead he stands and walks toward the doorway again, slower this time, more aware of each step, of each sound beneath his feet. And when he reaches the spot Ranger has been guarding, he does not rush, he does not force anything. He simply looks, really looks. And in the clearer light of morning, the difference becomes easier to see, subtle but undeniable. The wood there is not just worn, it is slightly raised along one edge, as if it has been lifted before, as if it was never meant to be permanent. And Ethan crouches again, the same position as the night before, but this time his hands do not hesitate. His fingers tracing the edge with more intention, pressing gently, testing, and Ranger shifts. Closer, not interfering, just present, his breath steady, his warmth close enough to feel, and Ethan presses down, then pulls slightly at the edge, and at first nothing happens, just resistance, the stubborn grip of wood that has not been moved in years, and he almost stops, almost tells himself it is nothing, just warped flooring, but Ranger lets out a low, quiet sound, not a bark, not a growl, something softer, something that feels like insistence rather than warning, and Ethan exhales, adjusts his grip, and pulls again, harder this time, and the board gives, just slightly, a faint shift, enough to confirm what the dog already knows, and something in Ethan changes in that moment, not excitement, not fear, but recognition, the kind that settles deep in the chest, the understanding that whatever is beneath this floor is not random, it is placed, it is hidden, and it has been waiting, and he works at it carefully now, lifting the edge little by little, the wood creaking in protest, dust falling in thin streams, the air filling with the dry scent of something long sealed away, and finally the board loosens enough to be moved aside, revealing a dark space beneath, no more than a foot deep, just enough to hold something small, something important, and Ethan pauses, not reaching in. Immediately, letting the moment stretch, letting the weight of it settle, and Ranger lowers his head slightly, peering into the opening with unwavering focus, as if confirming what he already sensed, and the light from the doorway falls across the hidden space, illuminating the outline of something inside. Not random debris, not loose dirt, but something shaped, deliberate, a container of some kind, edges straight, surface dulled by time. And Ethan feels his heartbeat shift, slow and steady. Not from fear but from clarity, because this is no longer just a place to sleep, no longer just a mistake or a last resort. This is something else entirely, something that has been buried not to be forgotten, but to be found, and he reaches down at last, fingers brushing against the surface of the hidden object, feeling the cold, solid reality of it beneath his touch, and for the first time since stepping onto this land, Ethan does not feel lost. He feels led, and beside him Ranger remains. Still, watchful, certain, like he has been guiding this moment all along. The object is heavier than it looks, and when Ethan Cole finally lifts it from the narrow space beneath the floor, it comes up with a faint resistance, as if the years had tried to hold it in place, as if time itself had wrapped around it and did not want to let go. And he brings it into the light slowly, both hands steady, careful not to rush something that already feels deliberate, and it is a metal box, about 12 inches long and maybe 8 inches wide, its surface dulled to a matte gray. By dust and age, edges worn but intact, the kind of container made to last, not to be seen, and for a moment he just holds it, feeling the weight settle into his palms, grounding him, anchoring him to something real, and Ranger steps closer now, no longer keeping distance, his nose hovering inches from the box, not touching, just sensing, as if confirming that what was hidden has finally come into the open, and Ethan sets it down on the floor beside the doorway where the morning light falls strongest, illuminating every scratch, every mark, every quiet detail that tells a story without words. And he notices there is no lock in the usual sense, no visible keyhole, just a small latch on the front, slightly rusted but not sealed, and that alone shifts something in his understanding, because this was not meant to stay buried forever. It was meant to be found by the right moment, the right person, or maybe the right reason, and he hesitates again, not out of fear but out of respect for what opening it might change, because whatever is inside this box has been waiting longer than he has been lost. And Ranger sits beside him now, posture calm but alert, his presence steady in a way that feels intentional, not accidental, like a silent permission, and Ethan exhales slowly, fingers brushing the latch, testing it gently, feeling the slight give beneath the rust, and with a quiet motion he lifts it, the metal releasing with a soft click that echoes more than it should in the stillness of the cabin. And for a brief second nothing happens, just the box resting there, open but not yet revealed. And then he lifts the lid, slowly, carefully, as if the contents might shift if handled too quickly. And inside there is no gold, no stacks of cash, nothing that glitters or shines, just a collection of items arranged with quiet precision, papers bundled together, a small leather-bound journal worn at the edges, and beneath them something thicker, something solid. And Ethan feels something unexpected in his chest, not disappointment, but recognition, because this is not about sudden wealth. This is about something deeper, something that carries weight beyond dollars. And he reaches in, lifting the top bundle of papers, unfolding them carefully. The pages yellowed but still intact, covered in typed text and handwritten notes in the margins, names, dates, locations, details that begin to form a pattern the longer he looks. And his brow tightens slightly as he reads, not from confusion, but from clarity forming too quickly, because these are not random records. They are organized, deliberate, documenting something that was never meant to be public. And he flips to another page, then another, each one adding a layer, a connection, a thread that leads somewhere larger than this cabin, larger than this clearing. And Ranger shifts again, lowering himself to the floor, but keeping his eyes on Ethan, watching not the box now, but the man, as if the discovery has moved from the ground into something more personal. And Ethan sets the papers aside, reaching for the journal next, the leather soft from age, the spine worn but strong. And when he opens it, the pages inside are filled with handwriting, steady and controlled, the kind that belongs to someone who took their time, who understood the importance of each word. And Ethan reads the first few lines silently, then again more slowly, letting the meaning settle, and something in his expression changes. Not sharply, not dramatically, just a quiet shift, the kind that happens when a man realizes he has stepped into a story that did not begin with him. And as the morning light grows stronger, filling more of the room, pushing back the shadows that had clung to the corners, Ethan sits there on the floor of the cabin with the open box beside him, the past laid out piece by piece. And for the first time since he arrived, the silence does not feel empty, it feels full, like it has been holding this moment in place, waiting for someone willing to listen. And beside him Ranger rests his head gently on his paws, eyes still watchful, still certain, like he has done exactly what he was meant to do. And now the choice of what comes next belongs not to the place, but to the man who found it. The words in the journal do not rush, they unfold slowly, each line written with a patience that feels deliberate, as if the person who wrote them understood that someday someone else would read them and need time to see what was hidden between the lines. And Ethan Cole leans forward slightly, elbows resting on his knees, the morning light catching the edge of the pages as he turns them one by one, careful not to tear what time has already worn thin. And the handwriting remains steady, throughout, not hurried, not uncertain, just quiet and precise. And the entries begin to form a pattern the deeper he goes. References to land purchases, names of companies that do not appear on any sign or storefront, dates that line up too neatly with transfers and movements that feel less like coincidence and more like intention. And every few pages there are small notes in the margins, symbols, initials, short phrases underlined once, never twice, like markers left behind for someone who knows how to look. And Ethan's eyes narrow slightly, not in suspicion but in recognition, because this is not unfamiliar to him, not the details themselves, but the structure, the way information is layered, protected, revealed only in pieces. And he exhales slowly, shifting his weight as he flips to another page. And beneath the journal there is a second layer inside the box, something heavier, a stack of thin folders bound together with a faded strip of cloth. And he sets the journal aside gently, placing it where the light can still reach it, before lifting the folders, feeling the weight of them in his hands. Not just physical weight, but something else, something that carries consequence. And Ranger raises his head slightly, watching the movement, not tense, not alarmed, just present, as if the dog understands that whatever is happening now matters more than what was hidden before. And Ethan unties the cloth, the fabric fraying softly as it loosens, revealing a series of documents inside, thicker paper, official in appearance, stamped in places, signed in others. And he pulls the first one free, scanning it quickly, then again more slowly, the lines settling into meaning with each pass. And there it is, the connection, the thread that ties everything together, land ownership records tied to shell companies, properties bought and transferred under different names, but always circling back to the same small group of individuals. Names that appear in the margins of the journal, names that seem to carry weight beyond what is written on the page, and Ethan feels his jaw tighten slightly, not out of anger, not yet, but out of understanding, because this is not just history, it is something ongoing, something that was meant to stay quiet. And he continues reading, each document adding another piece, another layer, and the cabin itself appears in one of the records, listed as a property acquired years ago, then marked as abandoned. But the timing does not match the rest. The sequence is off, as if this place was never meant to follow the same path as the others, as if it was chosen for a different purpose entirely. And Ethan glances around the room for a moment, seeing it differently now, not just as a forgotten structure, but as a point on a map he cannot yet fully see. And Ranger shifts closer, resting his head lightly against Ethan's leg, grounding him in the present, pulling him back from the edges of thought that threatened to spiral too far. And Ethan places a hand gently on the dog's neck, fingers brushing through the thick fur, steadying himself, reminding himself that whatever this is, it does not need to be solved all at once. And he returns his attention to the documents, slower now, more deliberate, reading not just for information but for intent, for the spaces between what is written. And one detail stands out more than the others, a final entry in the journal, written differently from the rest, the ink slightly darker, the handwriting just a fraction less controlled. And he turns back to it, reading it again, letting the words settle fully this time. And though it does not say everything directly, it says enough to understand that the person who hid this box did not do it out of fear, but out of purpose, that this was never meant to disappear forever. It was meant to be found when the time was right, by someone who would not ignore it. And Ethan leans back slightly, the weight of that realization settling into him. Not heavy, not crushing, but steady, like a responsibility placed quietly into his hands. And outside the light has grown stronger, the clearing brightening, the vines along the cabin catching the sun in a way that makes them look less like something choking the structure and more like something that can be cleared away. And for the first time since he arrived, Ethan does not feel like he is standing at the edge of something broken. He feels like he is standing at the beginning of something that has been waiting longer than he knew. And beside him, Ranger remains still, calm, certain, as if the path forward has already been chosen, even if Ethan has not yet taken the first step. The cabin no longer feels like something Ethan Cole stumbled into. It feels like something that has been quietly guiding him step by step. And as he gathers the papers back into the box with deliberate care, he does not rush, does not panic, because whatever this is, it has waited years, maybe longer, and it can wait another hour while he understands what must come next. And he closes the lid gently, not sealing it away but containing it, as if the truth inside needs structure before it can be carried forward. And Ranger watches the movement closely, his ears shifting slightly with every sound, not tense, just attentive, like a partner who knows the mission has changed even if no words have been spoken. And Ethan rises slowly to his feet, the weight of the decision ahead settling into his posture, not heavy but present. And he steps outside into the clearing, the morning now fully awake, sunlight filtering through the trees in long, clean beams, the air crisp and cool against his face. And for the first time since arriving, he takes a full breath that does not feel borrowed, that does not feel like something he has to hold on to. And the world outside the cabin seems almost unaware of what sits just a few feet behind him. Birds moving through branches, the distant hum of wind brushing across the hills, everything continuing as if nothing has changed. And yet for Ethan, everything has. And he walks a few steps into the clearing, turning back to look at the cabin from a distance, really seeing it now, not as a ruin, but as a marker, a place chosen for a reason. And Ranger follows this time, moving to his side without hesitation, his presence steady and close. And Ethan reaches down briefly, resting a hand on the dog's back, grounding himself in something certain before stepping into what is not. And his mind begins to move through possibilities, not scattered, not frantic, but structured, the way it once did when decisions mattered beyond survival, and he knows. He cannot keep this to himself, not because he is afraid, but because that was never the intention of what he found. The journal made that clear in its quiet way. This was meant to be uncovered and carried forward, not buried again under a different silence. And he thinks about the names, the records, the patterns that connect beyond this place. And he understands that the truth here reaches further than one cabin, further than one man trying to start over. And yet he does not feel overwhelmed, because the path ahead is not something he has to create. It is something he has to follow, just as Ranger followed whatever signal led him to that exact spot on the floor. And Ethan turns back toward the cabin, walking inside with a steadier step, the hesitation from before replaced by a quiet resolve. And he retrieves the box, holding it more firmly now, not as a discovery, but as a responsibility. And he looks around once more, taking in the details of the space, the worn boards, the filtered light, the vines pressing against the windows. And for a moment he considers leaving it all behind exactly as it is, preserving it as it was when he arrived. But something in him shifts, something small but certain, and he reaches for one of the windows, pushing it open wider, letting more light flood into the room, the air changing instantly, the stale weight lifting just enough to feel the difference. And Ranger steps fully inside now, crossing the threshold without pause, as if whatever held him back before has been resolved. And he moves through the room with a calm confidence, no longer searching, no longer waiting, just present. And Ethan watches him for a second, understanding that the dog has already done his part, and now it is his turn. And he steps back outside again, the box in his hands, the sun higher in the sky, casting fewer shadows across the clearing. And he looks toward the narrow dirt road that leads away from the cabin, the same road he arrived on with nothing but a tank nearly empty and a plan that did not exist. And now he stands there with something else entirely, not a plan, not yet, but a direction. And he begins to walk, each step measured but certain, Ranger moving beside him, without needing to be called. The two of them leaving the cabin behind not as an ending, but as the place where something long hidden finally chose to be seen. The road is narrower than Ethan remembers it, or maybe it only feels that way now because he is no longer driving towards something uncertain. He is walking away from something that has already changed him, and the gravel shifts softly beneath his boots as he moves forward, the metal box held steady against his side, not hidden, not displayed, just carried the way something important should be. And Ranger keeps pace beside him, his gait smooth and quiet, occasionally glancing up as if checking that Ethan has not lost direction, though it is clear now that neither of them is wandering anymore. And the trees begin to thin as the path curves gently downward, opening toward the edge of a small rural town that sits quietly beneath the morning sky, the kind of place where time moves slower and people notice things without always saying them out loud. And as Ethan approaches the first stretch of pavement, he slows slightly, not from hesitation but from awareness. Because stepping into town means stepping into something visible, something that cannot be undone once it begins. And he glances down at the box for a brief moment, feeling its weight again, not as a burden but as a reminder. And Ranger stops when he stops, standing still at his side, ears alert but calm, as if waiting for the next decision to take shape. And Ethan looks ahead, taking in the quiet storefronts, the faded signs, the single gas station at the corner with a flickering open sign that hums faintly in the morning air. And for a second, he considers passing through without stopping, continuing down the road until distance makes everything simpler. But he knows better than that, because distance never solved anything before. It only delayed what needed to be faced. And he exhales slowly, adjusting his grip on the box, before turning toward the gas station, each step deliberate, each movement grounded in a choice he is no longer avoiding. And inside the small building the air smells faintly of coffee and motor oil, a mix that feels oddly familiar. And behind the counter stands an older man, late 60s maybe, with a posture that has softened over time, but eyes that still notice more than they reveal. And the man looks up as Ethan enters, his gaze moving briefly to Ranger, then to the box, and finally settling on Ethan's face. And there is a pause, not uncomfortable, just observant, as if the man is measuring something without asking for it. And Ethan gives a small nod, not a greeting exactly, more an acknowledgement of presence, and the man returns it just as simply. No questions, no assumptions, just a quiet understanding that some things are not meant to be spoken immediately. And Ethan steps closer to the counter, setting the box down gently, not opening it yet, just placing it there in the light. And for a moment neither of them speaks, the hum of the cooler behind the counter filling the space between them. And Ranger settles beside Ethan, lying down with his head up, eyes moving between the two men with calm awareness. And finally Ethan speaks, his voice steady, not loud, not uncertain, just clear, saying that he needs to make a call. And the man nods once, reaching beneath the counter to slide an old landline phone across. The kind that still exists in places where reliability matters more than convenience. And Ethan takes it, the weight of the receiver, familiar in a way that brings something steady back into his hands. And as he dials, each number pressed with intention, he does not rush, does not second guess, because whatever happens next is no longer about whether he is ready. It is about whether he is willing. And when the line begins to ring, he glances briefly at Ranger, who meets his eyes without hesitation, without doubt. And in that quiet exchange something settles fully into place. Not fear, not uncertainty, but purpose. And Ethan lifts the receiver closer, listening as the call connects, knowing that this moment, simple as it seems, is the first step in turning something hidden into something seen. And this time, he does not turn away. The line clicks once, then twice, and a voice answers on the other end, calm and measured, the kind of voice that has heard many things and reacts to none of them too quickly. And Ethan Cole does not introduce himself with anything more than his name. No rank, no past, just the present moment carried through a wire. And he speaks plainly, choosing each word with care, explaining that he has come across documents tied to land ownership and records that do not align with public filings. And there is a pause on the other end, not disbelief, not surprise, just a shift in attention, the subtle change that happens when something real enters the conversation, and the voice asks where he is, not urgently, not sharply, just directly. And Ethan gives the name of the town, the road, the nearest marker he can see. And beside him Ranger remains still, head lifted slightly, ears angled toward the sound of Ethan's voice, as if listening not to the words but to the intent behind them. And the older man behind the counter pretends not to listen, wiping down a section of the surface that is already clean, his movements slow and deliberate, offering privacy without stepping away. And the voice on the phone tells Ethan to stay where he is, that someone will come, that what he is should not be moved again until it is properly seen. And Ethan nods once even though the gesture cannot be seen, a habit from a different life where acknowledgement mattered. And he places the receiver back onto its cradle with a soft click, the sound final in a way that settles something inside him. And for a moment he does not move, his hand resting lightly on the edge of the counter, the box still closed in front of him, the quiet of the room wrapping around the decision he has just made. And Ranger shifts slightly, leaning closer, his presence steady, unshaken, as if confirming that nothing has gone wrong, that this is the path that was meant to unfold. And Ethan exhales slowly, a breath that feels different from the ones before, not held, not measured, just released. And he glances toward the window where the light has grown stronger, the morning now fully awake, people beginning to move in the distance, cars passing slowly along the road, unaware of what is about to surface from something as small and hidden as a box beneath a floor. And the older man finally looks up, meeting Ethan's eyes with a quiet understanding, not asking what is inside, not needing to, and he gives a slight nod, the kind that says some things are better handled the right way, even if they take time. And Ethan returns it just as simply, then rests his hand on the box again, not gripping it, not guarding it, just acknowledging it. And beside him Ranger lowers his head slightly, his body relaxed now, the tension from before gone, replaced by something calmer, something complete, as if the work he was meant to do has reached its end. And now the rest belongs to the man standing beside him. And Ethan stands there in the quiet of that small room, no longer a man trying to disappear, no longer someone drifting between places, but someone who chose to stop, to listen, and to carry forward what was waiting to be found. And outside the day continues without pause, but inside, Something long hidden has already begun to come into the light. The wait does not feel long, but it changes the shape of the room, stretching each minute into something more deliberate, more defined, and Ethan Cole remains where he stands, one hand resting lightly on the metal box, the other hanging at his side, his posture steady in a way that has nothing to do with control and everything to do with acceptance, and Ranger lies beside him without shifting, his breathing slow and even, eyes half open but aware, no longer searching, no longer guiding, just present in a way that feels complete. And outside the quiet town continues to move in small, ordinary ways. A truck passing, a door opening somewhere down the street, the distant sound of a radio drifting faintly through the morning air, all of it unchanged, all of it unaware. And then the sound comes, not loud, not urgent, just the steady approach of a vehicle turning onto the gravel outside, tires pressing into stone with a rhythm that carries intention without needing to announce it. And Ethan lifts his head slightly, not startled, not tense, just aware, and the older man behind the counter glances once toward the window before returning to his place, offering the same quiet respect he has shown from the beginning. And the vehicle comes to a stop, engine idling for a moment before cutting off, leaving behind a silence that feels different from before, not empty, but expectant, and the door opens. Footsteps follow, measured and unhurried, and when the door to the station swings inward, the air shifts just enough to mark the transition, and two individuals step inside, not in uniform that demands attention, but in presence that carries it anyway, their movements calm, their eyes observant, taking in the room without disrupting it, and Ethan does not step back, does not step forward. He simply stands where he is, meeting that moment without resistance. And one of them approaches, offering a nod rather than a question, acknowledging what has already been set in motion, and Ethan returns the gesture, then moves his hand slightly away from the box, not distancing himself from it, but allowing it to become what it was always meant to be, something to be seen, something to be understood beyond just one person. And the lid is opened again, this time not by discovery, but by purpose, the contents revealed under a different kind of light. And there is no rush, no sudden reaction, just a careful attention, the kind that respects both the weight of what is found and the path that led it here. And Ethan watches quietly, not detached, but no longer holding it alone, and Ranger lifts his head, observing the exchange with the same calm certainty he carried from the beginning, as if nothing about this outcome is surprising, as if it was always the direction things would move once the first step was taken. And time passes in a way that feels both brief and complete, the kind of time that does not need to be measured to be understood, and eventually the box is closed again, not hidden, but secured, and one of the individuals looks to Ethan, offering a simple acknowledgement, not praise, not gratitude, just recognition, the kind that does not need words to carry meaning. And Ethan nods once in return, feeling something settle fully inside him, something that had been shifting since the moment he stepped onto that clearing. And for the first time in a long while, he does not feel like he is carrying something unfinished. He feels like he has placed it where it belongs. And the individuals turn to leave, taking the box with them, not removing it from his life, but moving it into its next purpose. And the door opens again, closing softly behind them. The sound final, but not empty. And the room returns to its quiet state, but it is not the same quiet as before. It is lighter now, clearer, as if something unseen has been lifted from the space itself. And Ethan remains standing for a moment longer, then exhales slowly, a breath that feels complete from beginning to end, and Ranger rises beside him, stretching once before. Stepping closer, his head brushing lightly against Ethan's hand, grounding him in the present in the simplest way possible, and Ethan looks down at him, a faint, almost unnoticed shift in his expression. Not a smile exactly, but something close to it, something softer, and he reaches down, resting his hand on the dog's neck, feeling the steady warmth, the quiet loyalty that asked for nothing and gave everything. And outside the day continues, unchanged and moving forward, and Ethan steps toward the door, not to leave something behind, but to move into what comes next, no longer searching for a place to disappear, but standing in one where he finally does not need to.